as a European, sometimes I enjoy just looking over the pond, seeing what the Americans are up to, seeing if they're having a normal one. And oh boy, we have a peak normal one example here, where you have a politician from the US called Eric Greitens. I think that's how you pronounce it. Greitens, who is running for US Senate. And he just put out a new a campaign ad that I think is pretty interesting. I think it's got that red, white, and blue spirit, and I just want to share it with you guys. Okay, I just want to get you guys' take on it. Okay, so here we go. Let's check this out.
I'm Eric Greitens, Navy SEAL, and today we're going rhino hunting. The rhino feeds on corruption and is marked by the stripes of cowardice. Join the MAGA crew, get a rhino hunting permit. There's no bagging limit, no tagging limit, and it doesn't expire until we save our country. I'm Eric.
I should laugh, but it's just so ridiculous. America is just so ridiculous. Okay, so for those of you who don't get the allegory here, okay? So Republicans often call rhinos the members of the other members of the Republican Party that are kind of stuck in the old ways, the old neoconservatives, or is it neoconservatives? Is that the word? Yeah, the neocons, the warmongers, the Bushes, the people basically that aren't part of the populist Republicans in the same way that people like Trump were. They're officially, you know, they're called rhinos generally, Republican rhinos by the Republican Party. And this person who is part of the Republican Party and is running for Senate is just straight up made a video where he's like, hey, let me get some of my military pals to bust into a random empty building, throw in some flashbangs, and I can talk about how every one of my voters now have a permit to hunt these rhinos, and that this doesn't stop until America is safe, whatever that means. He could maybe have gotten away with it if he'd made it a bit more metaphorical, you know. maybe if he had like been like in a safari place, you know, put some camo on, had like an old hunting rifle, and like been something like that. But no, this is literally like urban warfare. that's going on right here. That's what it is. Like, there is no possible deniability. Like Danny says, they're memeing themselves into domestic terrorist charges. It's ridiculous. I don't understand. And this Greitens guy is crazy. There's a bunch of stuff about him being dishonorably discharged from the SEALs, allegations of sexual assault and finance improprieties when it comes to him running his previous campaigns. It's just crazy things. American politics is just built different. I don't know what to tell you. Just like, imagine being one of these people. It's like, hey, by the way, I'm running for office. I want to record a video in which we break into a house and talk about how we have now given our voters a permit to go and hunt and kill the Republican rhinos. Do you want to participate and be shown in this video that will definitely not be subject to any investigation at all? Thanks, excellent. Thanks for like, who would say yes to this? I don't even know what to say. And you know what's even crazier? Recent polls have shown that Greitens is well positioned to win the GOP primary in Missouri. Okay. So at least it's Missouri. Okay? It's Missouri. All right? It's not like, it's not a normal state, okay? It's fucking Missouri. He's literally winning the polls. Greitens 24.8. The second one after that is 21.3. In terms of the Democrat versus Republican, Greitens is winning versus the Democratic equivalent. It's actually ridiculous. Missouri is pretty conservative, and yeah, it's pretty conservative. When you can put out an ad like that and still be leading in the polls, it's pretty crazy. You get to some pretty crazy places. It's just like a reality check. Just like the US is, it's crazy. And I hope the US gets its stuff together, because stuff like it's ridiculous. I would be shocked if there isn't like an investigation or something into this. Because it's literally him using a well-known term for certain types of non-populist Republicans and saying that we have a license to hunt them, while reenacting like a scene from urban warfare. It's always been this crazy with the militia stuff. Yeah, I mean, it's part of like, it's like the American spirit, right? It's a red, white, and blue. I'm gonna cock my shotgun and break into this fucking minimum wage suburb place. And like, yeah, I don't know what to tell you. I hope he doesn't win, but damn. I don't know what else I can say. I want to watch it again. It's such a beautiful piece of cinema.
I'm Eric Greitens, Navy SEAL, and today we're going rhino hunting. The rhino feeds on corruption.
The look on his face when he cocks a shotgun. This is the look of a man who's about to be under federal investigation for incitement to domestic terrorism.
The rhino feeds on corruption and is marked by the stripes of cowardice.
Wait, did they even actually break through the door, or was that a sneaky cut? Okay, no, it definitely hit it, but... It's so LARPy.
Join the MAGA crew, get a rhino hunting permit. There's no bagging limit, no tagging limit, and it doesn't expire until we save our country.
Jesus. It's just so LARPy. It's just like an empty fucking room. I'll be terrified of Missouri. Missouri's a crazy place, but at least we can find comfort in that. This crazy stuff, okay, it's happening in Missouri, which is probably the most conservative state, right? I would, at least in the top 3 conservative states. There's no way it's not. There's no way it's not. But yeah, that's crazy shit. Good luck, America. But yeah, so for a more serious analysis of like what this is, it's just, I mean, this is the kind of the logical end, or the outcomes of when populist rhetoric gets out of control. And I talked about this a bit in my conversation with SDL, and I think it's important to talk about again. The fundamental reason why I hate populism and why I think it's really damaging is because populism fundamentally undermines the very existence and the legitimacy of institutions. What I mean by this, there was actually somebody that contacted me because they thought I was unclear the last time I explained this. So I'm going to explain this here now. There's a difference between doing something like there are significant issues with the US legal and judicial systems and the outcomes that they have when it comes to systemic racism, for instance. There's a difference between doing that and doing the US court system and legal system is fundamentally broken, and it never acts appropriately, and it cannot be fixed. It needs to be thrown out. And for every day that institution is allowed to continue to function, more and more harm is perpetuated. The only solution is riddance and overthrow and revolution. The difference there essentially is it's the difference between analyzing and criticizing a system or an institution and attempting to resolve that and reform that, and the difference between undermining that very institution's legitimacy, attacking the very institution itself instead of the problems that it has. And the reasons why attacking an institution itself is such a bad thing is because it is fundamentally institutions that bring about civilization and development. Without institutions to keep track of and to enforce, legal doctrines, political systems, economic systems, electoralism, civil rights, we have nothing. We have anarchy, not in the anarchist like political sense of things, but in the crazy what the fuck is happening type way. Institutions are vital to the functioning of democratic and modern societies, and it's really scary when those institutions begin to be undermined. Because what does that intuitively incentivize? It incentivizes action outside of institutions, particularly illegal and violent action. So when you have the movement like the MAGA movement talking about how, the political process, the electoral process, the courts are entirely fucked. It's broken. It is, they're carried over. The election is being rigged. The courts are against us. All these rhinos are lobbying against us. We can never operate perfectly within the system. That leads to things like we just saw. That leads to those videos of people being like, hey, rack shotgun with malicious intent. We have a permit to hunt rhinos. Like, that's what that leads to. And this exists. It exists both right-wing and left-wing populism. We had some of the left-wing populism when it comes to the abolish the police movement that got a little bit of backing and stuff during the during and after the 2020 riots following the death of George Floyd. So it exists on both sides to some extent, but not nearly to the same extent. The right in America is fundamentally, in their populist advocacy, a lot more damaging to the fundamental institutions of the country than what left-wing democratic alternatives to that is. It exists on both sides, and we should be wary of it on both sides. We should try our very best to snuff it out at its root in both sides, but it's more common on the right, and it's more of a serious threat on the right at the moment in the current political climate. And it leads to things like these videos. And that's me looping this entire thing back. Populism causes things like this. When you undermine the fundamental systems, you leave people no recourse but to work outside of them, to take extra legal action, and to appeal to that aesthetic in a way that erodes democracy, that erodes security, and erodes the fundamental things that we must rely on for a democratic, peaceful country and society to function. And that's really scary. And I hope it doesn't get this bad in the future. I hope I'm not, I don't know, in a few years watching a video of this happening in Sweden to the same extent, where somebody who puts out videos like this has a real chance of winning. But you never know. But yeah, populism is awful. I hate populism. It's cringe as hell. And I think this is like an iteration of that. We feel like institutions' legitimacy, but I feel like populism also describes this natural response to institutions that aren't working. So institutions can be not working to different extents. So you can have an issue like the fact that, let's say like I don't know, what's like an issue we have? Okay, let's say access to voting. In some places, it's difficult to have access to voting, right? You have a lot of like big districts with a lot of people in them, with very few voting centers at inconvenient times, and it becomes harder for people to vote. That is an issue that exists with the institution of voting in the United States of America, with the electoral system. However, that critique doesn't lead itself to, okay, we need to just get rid of the electoral system as a whole. That's a problem that exists within it. That's something that isn't working within it, but that doesn't merit completely like throwing out the institution and undermining the entirety of it. Whereas if you have conversations like, no matter what happens, the election is going to be rigged, all the courts, all the legal systems, you know, all the three-letter agencies or whatever, all of those are fundamentally rigged against us and don't want us to succeed, then you're fucked. Because at that point, it's like, okay, well, you can't fix it. It's broken. Like, it's fundamentally broken, right? I agree with you currently our institutions can be reformed to optimize them. However, it sounds like you're categorically saying they are untouchable. What if in the future we lose the need for one? What metric do you choose to decide an institution's validity? I think that the like the institutions of democracy, the institution of like the rule of law, the institution of like, yeah, like a federal government, I think all of these are necessary institutions for the proper functioning for a democratic society. And I can make arguments to that effect. I think that a democratic society is good. I think those lead to beneficial outcomes. That those lead to like situations and societies in which you see generally better qualities of life, in which you see better representation for the population, in which you see a reduced risk for violence, political violence especially. And I think that those are desirable things. And in the pursuit of that, I think that there are certain institutions that are absolutely necessary in order to keep that and to maintain that. So we need to be careful with our rhetoric, because there are problems with all those institutions. But if we are very blunt with our rhetoric about the problems with those institutions, we can end up giving people the impressions that the institutions are just fucked and that they must go.